Imagine a world where death wasn't the end, but a passage into the unknown. A world where our ancestors faced the same ultimate fate we do today, yet viewed it through eyes unclouded by modern science or religion as we know it. How did these early human societies make sense of death's mystery? And how did they create symbols that still echo throughout our world thousands of years later? Since the dawn of humanity, death has been one of the greatest mysteries confronting our species. To grapple with this unknowable frontier, our ancestors crafted powerful symbols that did far more than simply represent death. They helped people comprehend it, process it, and even transcend it. Today, we're going to journey back through time to explore how these symbols first emerged and what they meant to the earliest civilizations. Think about it. Every human culture throughout history has needed to make sense of mortality. From the elaborate burial chambers of ancient Egypt to the silent stone monuments of prehistoric Europe, we've always sought meaning in the face of our inevitable end. The symbols our ancestors created weren't just artistic expressions, they were bridges between worlds, between the living and whatever might exist beyond. The fascinating story of death symbolism begins deep in our past, in firelit caves where early humans first contemplated what happens when life ends. We'll discover how these early expressions evolved into complex systems of belief that shaped entire civilizations. Whether carved in stone, painted on pottery, or woven into ritual garments, these symbols carried profound significance, many of which we still recognize today, though we've often forgotten their original meanings. If you love history and want to unravel the mysteries of humanity's greatest empires and earliest societies, like this video, subscribe to the Dawn of Humankind channel, and don't miss a single episode of our journey through the forgotten wisdom of our ancestors. It all began in the caves. Imagine yourself 17,000 years ago, standing deep within the limestone caverns of Lascaux in what we now call France. By the flickering light of animal fat lamps, our ancestors created something extraordinary, vivid paintings that still speak to us across millennia. These cave paintings show human and animal figures in scenes that many scholars believe are deeply connected to death and rebirth. In the famous shaft scene at Lascaux, we see a rare depiction of a human figure, stick-like, and with what appears to be a bird's head, lying before a wounded bison. Is this one of humanity's earliest representations of death? Many archaeologists believe so. The dying bison, with its entrails spilling out, faces this fallen human figure in what seems to be a dramatic moment of mutual mortality. But these weren't just pretty pictures. For our ancestors, these images served as powerful gateways between worlds. When shamans or tribal members ventured deep into these caves, away from sunlight and daily life, they were literally entering another realm. The realm of spirits, ancestors, and perhaps the afterlife itself. The fascinating thing about these early death symbols is that they appear across continents, suggesting something universal in human consciousness. From the handprints in Argentina's Cueva de las Manos, created over 9,000 years ago, to the mysterious spirit figures of Australia's Aboriginal rock art, early humans everywhere felt compelled to depict their relationship with death. One of the most intriguing early death symbols comes from Çatalhöyük in modern-day Turkey, a settlement that thrived around 7,000 years before Christ. Here, archaeologists discovered walls decorated with vultures swooping down on headless human figures, a graphic representation of sky burial practices where the dead were deliberately exposed to scavenging birds. This wasn't considered disrespectful. Rather, it was believed that the birds transported the soul to the afterlife. These cave paintings and early symbols weren't just art for art's sake. They were technology, spiritual technology that helped our ancestors communicate with what they believed was a powerful and ever-present spirit world. By depicting death and its mysteries, they weren't just recording their fears, they were actively engaging with death, perhaps even attempting to control it through symbolic representation. When we look at these ancient images today, we're not just seeing primitive art. We're witnessing humanity's first attempts to grapple with our greatest mystery through symbols that would eventually evolve into complex religious systems, burial practices, and cultural traditions that continue to this day. For many ancient cultures, death wasn't the final chapter of existence, but rather a doorway to something new. This profound understanding transformed how our ancestors approached mortality, turning what could have been simply an ending into a meaningful transition. The ancient Egyptians perfected this concept, developing one of history's most elaborate systems for navigating the afterlife. Imagine living in a society where preparation for death might begin decades before your final breath. The Egyptians believed in a complex journey through the underworld, guided by gods like Anubis, the jackal-headed guardian of the dead, who would lead the soul through trials and judgments. The famous Book of the Dead wasn't actually a book as we think of one today, but rather a collection of spells and instructions written on papyrus scrolls and placed with the deceased. Think of it as the ultimate travel guide, providing essential knowledge for navigating the dangerous terrain of the afterlife. It contained magical incantations to overcome obstacles, defeat demons, and ultimately reach the field of reeds, their paradise. Mummification itself was far more than preservation of the body. The elaborate process, taking 70 days to complete, was a symbolic transformation. As embalmers removed organs and preserved the body with natron salt and fragrant oils, they recited prayers and performed rituals that were believed to help reconstruct the deceased for their journey. The brain was removed through the nostrils and discarded, as Egyptians believed the heart, not the brain, was the seat of intelligence and emotion. The tombs themselves tell us volumes about how death was viewed. Far from being simply burial places, they were equipped as eternal homes, with everything the deceased might need: furniture, food, clothing, games, and treasured possessions. Wall paintings didn't just decorate these spaces. They magically activated these provisions for eternity through their depiction. But Egypt wasn't alone in seeing death as a passage. Halfway around the world, ancient Chinese emperors were buried with terracotta armies of thousands of life-sized warriors, horses and chariots, an entire military force for the emperor's use in the next life. The famous terracotta army of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, discovered in 1974, included over 8,000 soldiers, each with unique facial features. In ancient Mexico, the Mayans and later the Aztecs created intricate funerary masks designed to transform the deceased into gods in the afterlife. Made of jade, gold, and precious stones, these masks weren't merely decorative. They were functional tools for the journey beyond death. Perhaps most touching of all were the customs of ancient Germanic and Norse peoples, who buried their dead in ships or ship-shaped stone arrangements. These ship burials reflected the belief that the deceased needed transportation to cross the waters, separating the world of the living from the realm of the dead. The spectacular Sutton Hoo burial in England contained a complete ship with treasures, suggesting it was the tomb of a king sailing to the afterlife. What connects all these diverse practices is a profound understanding. Death wasn't the end of the story, but simply the beginning of a new chapter. By preparing the deceased with symbols, tools, and knowledge for this journey, our ancestors transformed death from something to be feared into a sacred transition, worthy of elaborate preparation and celebration. Not all symbols of death were about hope and passage to better worlds. Many ancient cultures created powerful symbols born from fear, protective emblems designed to ward off evil and shield both the living and the dead from supernatural threats. The ancient Greeks, masters of mythology and symbolism, used the terrifying image of Medusa to protect their homes, temples, and even their dead. Imagine walking through an ancient Greek cemetery and seeing the serpent-haired Gorgon's face staring back at you from tombstones and mausoleums. Her petrifying gaze wasn't just decorative. It served as a spiritual security system, turning away malevolent spirits just as she turned mortals to stone in mythology. What makes this even more fascinating is the origin of Medusa herself. Before becoming a monster, Greek myths tell us she was once a beautiful priestess in Athena's temple. After being violated by Poseidon within the sacred space, Athena punished Medusa by transforming her into the snake-haired creature whose gaze turned living beings to stone. In death, her severed head became a powerful protective symbol that even adorned Athena's shield. The Vikings took a different but equally powerful approach. These feared Norse warriors carved intricate runes, mysterious symbols filled with magical power, into standing stones and burial chambers. These weren't simply decorative or commemorative, they were active, magical protections. The Björketorp runestone in Sweden carries an explicit curse that threatens terrible fate to anyone who disturbs the dead. I, master of the runes, conceal here runes of power. Incessantly plagued by maleficence, doomed to insidious death, is he who breaks this monument. In ancient Japan, grotesque tomb guardians called haniwa were placed around burial mounds. These hollow clay figures of warriors, horses and demons stood watch over the deceased, warding off evil spirits and ensuring the dead remained undisturbed. Some tombs featured dozens or even hundreds of these silent guardians. Perhaps most chilling were the practices in medieval Europe, where crossroads burials for suspected vampires included stakes through the heart, stones wedged in mouths, and decapitations. All powerful symbols meant not to honor the dead, but to prevent their return. These weren't isolated incidents. Archaeologists have discovered hundreds of such deviant burials across Europe. Even architectural elements became protective death symbols. Gargoyles and grotesques adorning medieval cathedrals weren't just artistic expressions or waterspouts. They were spiritual guardians, frightening away demons with their own hideous appearances. The word gargoyle itself comes from the French gargouiller, meaning to gurgle, referring to the sound of water passing through these carved stone waterspouts. Hey, did you know that the human skull is one of the oldest and most universal symbols of death? It appears in virtually every culture's death iconography, from ancient Celtic head cults to the elaborate crystal skulls of Mesoamerica. If you're enjoying this deep dive into death symbolism, like this video, share it with friends who appreciate history's darker corners, and subscribe to The Dawn of Humankind for more incredible stories about our ancestors. And tell us in the comments, which death symbol do you find most intriguing? Is it the protective runes, the warding gaze of Medusa, or something else entirely? Did you know the human skull is one of the oldest and most universal symbols of death? There's something deeply profound about this particular symbol that resonates across time and cultures. From pre-Columbian civilizations to 18th century pirates sailing the high seas, the skull has represented both our inevitable mortality and the power over life and death itself. What makes the skull so powerful as a symbol is its immediate recognition. When our ancestors first held the bleached skull of a deceased loved one or enemy, they were looking directly at what remains when everything else is gone. The ultimate reminder that beneath our differences, we all share the same fate. The ancient Aztecs took skull symbolism to extraordinary heights with their tzompantli, enormous skull racks displaying thousands of skulls from sacrificial victims. The Great Tzompantli of Tenochtitlan reportedly contained over 60,000 skulls, creating a wall of death that stretched across the sacred precinct. Yet for the Aztecs, these weren't merely gruesome trophies. They believed human sacrifice fed the gods and maintained cosmic balance, making these skull displays symbols of life's continuation, not just its end. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Tibetan monks crafted elaborate kapala, ceremonial cups made from human skulls. These weren't created out of macabre fascination, but as profound spiritual tools, reminding practitioners of impermanence. Some of these skull cups were intricately carved and inlaid with precious stones, transforming a symbol of death into an object of beauty and contemplation. One of the most fascinating uses of skull symbolism comes from the medieval European tradition of memento mori, remember you must die. Wealthy merchants and nobles would commission paintings that included skulls, hourglasses, and wilting flowers, keeping these somber reminders in their homes during times of great prosperity. Even jewelry featured tiny skulls, worn not as fashion statements, but as constant reminders of mortality. Mary, Queen of Scots, owned a remarkable skull-shaped watch, a timepiece that literally measured her life ticking away. Perhaps the most recognizable skull symbol today is the pirate's Jolly Roger, that infamous black flag featuring a white skull and crossed bones. While we associate it with adventure and treasure hunting, for sailors in the 1700s, spotting this flag on the horizon meant something terrifying. Pirates deliberately chose this stark symbol to inspire fear and prompt surrender without a fight. The message was clear: surrender your valuables, or join the ranks of the dead. Yet across these diverse uses, the skull serves one fundamental purpose. It is the great equalizer. Kings and peasants, warriors and children, all are reduced to the same essential form in death. In the famous words written on Shakespeare's grave, "Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones." The skull reminds us that regardless of wealth, power, or status, we all face the same ultimate fate. This universal recognition might explain why the skull remains such a potent symbol even today. From Halloween decorations to warning labels on poisons, the human skull continues to communicate its age-old message. Mortality is universal, inevitable, and perhaps the only truly democratic experience we all share. Art has always been humanity's way of exploring death, grappling with its mystery, confronting its inevitability, and sometimes even finding beauty in its darkness. Throughout history, creative expression has given us ways to process our mortality, often revealing profound cultural attitudes toward life's end. During the Renaissance and Middle Ages, Europe was haunted by a particularly striking artistic motif known as the danse macabre, or the dance of death. Picture this, a series of images showing the skeleton of death itself, leading people from every walk of life, popes, emperors, peasants, children, in a macabre dance toward the grave. These weren't hidden away in private collections. They were painted on church walls and cemetery arches, printed in books, and carved in stone for all to see. What makes the Dance of Death so compelling is its brutal democracy. In one famous example from the Cimetière des Innocents in Paris, completed in 1424 but sadly destroyed centuries later, death was shown claiming everyone regardless of wealth, power, or piety. Kings danced alongside beggars, bishops alongside merchants, a stark reminder that death comes for us all, making mockery of our social distinctions. These images proliferated after the Black Death ravaged Europe. Having witnessed death claim perhaps a third of the continent's population, medieval artists didn't shy away from mortality. They confronted it directly, even finding dark humor in death's inevitability. Many of these images included dialogue, with death taunting its victims with lines like, "I lead the dance for all mankind," or "Neither wealth nor medicine can save you from my embrace." Contrast this with the radically different approach found in Mexico's Day of the Dead celebrations. Here, death isn't portrayed as a terrifying skeletal figure, but as La Catrina, an elegantly dressed female skeleton adorned with flowers and fine clothing, often smiling broadly. This iconic figure originated from the political cartoons of José Guadalupe Posada in the early 20th century, but has roots in ancient Aztec rituals honoring the dead that date back thousands of years. What's fascinating about Mexico's approach is how it transforms death from something fearful into something familiar, even familial. During Dia de los Muertos, families create colorful altars adorned with marigolds, sugar skulls, and the favorite foods and possessions of their deceased loved ones. Far from mournful, these celebrations include music, feasting, and storytelling, a joyful reunion with those who've passed on. The artistry involved is breathtaking. Elaborate paper cutouts called papel picado flutter in the breeze. Intricate sugar skulls are decorated with the names of the dead, and golden marigold petals are strewn to guide spirits home. Death here isn't defeated or denied. It's decorated, celebrated, and welcomed as part of life's natural cycle. Japanese art offers yet another perspective through the tradition of ukiyo-e prints, depicting beautiful women transforming into skeletons. These memento mori, particularly those by the artist Kuniyoshi in the 1800s, reminded viewers that beauty is fleeting, yet found a strange elegance in the skeletal form itself. Even modern art continues this exploration. Damien Hirst's famous diamond-encrusted skull, titled For the Love of God, sold for over £70 million in 2007, becoming one of the most expensive contemporary artworks ever. Was this a commentary on death's relationship with wealth, a meditation on immortality through art, or simply a provocative fusion of mortality and luxury? What connects these diverse artistic traditions is their refusal to look away from death. Whether through the grim reminder of the Danse Macabre, the celebratory spirit of Dia de los Muertos, or contemporary artistic explorations, human creativity continues to confront our greatest mystery, helping us process what cannot be avoided, but might, through art, be better understood. The symbolism of death offers us a powerful window into what ancient societies believed, feared, and hoped for. From the flickering firelight of prehistoric caves to the digital memorials of the modern world, these symbols remind us that while death remains the great universal experience, how we understand it reflects our deepest values and cultural identity. What's particularly fascinating is how death symbolism reveals the continuity of human experience across millennia. The skull that adorned ancient ritual spaces now appears on warning labels and Halloween decorations. The protective symbols once carved on Viking tombs find their echo in the locks and security systems protecting modern cemeteries. Even our funeral customs, the flowers, the speeches, the gathering of community, bear the ghostly imprints of rituals that began before written history. Perhaps the most profound lesson from this journey through death symbolism is that our ancestors rarely saw death as simply an ending. Whether through Egyptian preparation for the afterlife, Norse conceptions of Valhalla, or Mexican celebration of ancestral connections, death was understood as transformation, continuation, and sometimes even renewal. These symbols weren't just about marking an end. They were about making meaning. This perspective challenges us to consider, how does our modern society deal with death today? Have we lost something valuable by sanitizing death, removing it from daily life, and speaking of it in whispers and euphemisms? Many anthropologists suggest that contemporary Western culture is uniquely death-denying compared to historical societies, preferring to hide away the realities of mortality behind hospital doors and funeral industry practices. Yet signs of change are emerging. The growing death-positive movement encourages more open conversations about mortality. Green burial options reconnect death with natural cycles. Digital memorials create new spaces for remembrance. Perhaps we're not so different from our ancestors after all, still searching for ways to make meaning from mortality, still creating symbols that help us face the inevitable. Whether carved in stone, painted on canvas, or digitized in pixels, death symbols continue their ancient work, helping us confront our fears, honor our departed, and find meaning in our finite existence. They remind us that acknowledging death isn't morbid. It's perhaps the most human thing we do. What death symbols speak to you? How do you think about mortality in your own life? Perhaps the most valuable tradition we can carry forward from our ancestors isn't any specific symbol or ritual, but their willingness to look directly at death, not with paralyzing fear, but with clear-eyed acceptance and even sometimes celebration. If you enjoyed this exploration of death symbolism throughout human history, please like this video, share it with friends who appreciate these deeper historical discussions, and subscribe to the Dawn of Humankind channel for more content about ancient civilizations and the timeless human experiences that connect us to our ancestors. Until our next journey through history, remember that understanding death has always been part of understanding life itself.